Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jared Doucette. I'm the director for the College of Agriculture's Data Services team. And we're here today with the Digital Ag Seminar. There's a data-driven seminar series. And so I'd like to bring your attention to the screen up here, or your screen if you're calling in from home. Today's speaker is Carlos Hirsch from the company Eiwa, and the upcoming seminars for this are
Panel discussion.
all on the screen. There's no old ones up there.
Right.
So I'm just going to talk to the people in the room and the people online that are watching this recorded. So it looks like there's 4 main upcoming sessions. Some of them are groups of people, and then the last one is kind of towards the end of the semester there. So I assume you're all on the email list if you're here today and know how to find this information. So Carlos over here joins us today. He's the Chief Business Development Officer for Eiwa. He's got a master's degree from Washington University in St. Louis, and then also a Bachelor of Science from ESALQ in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Eiwa is a company that focuses on digital agriculture and is really looks at digital solutions for crops such as sugar, ethanol, grain, and the cotton markets. Their big focus now, they started off in kind of the remote sensing arena, GIS area, and now they've really have a larger focus on integrating data that's both geospatial and kind of tabular, local system based. And so they help farmers and researchers collect, integrate, and analyze agronomic data so that they can make better decisions, have better discussions. And so I'll turn it over to Carlos here now. And
appreciate it. Thank you, Derek. So first of all, thank you all for having me. Again, Carlos Hirsch from Eiwa. I think I need to share screens again. Is that right? Okay. And before I get too far into my presentation and to a specific topic, I wanted to stimulate the audience a little bit of asking the question, what is wrong with this picture? Is there anything wrong with this image?
upside down.
Okay, somebody said it's upside down. What else? Well, the only error here is that's rotating to the wrong direction. It's a ball. It doesn't have it up and down. We were all taught that this is the top and that's the bottom. That's how we all were raised, right? And we're taught how to see maps. And the north is up and the south is bottom. But I always like to make this joke because we kind of get stimulated to think one way, and sometimes it's just, you know, it being a circle or a
Sphere.
A sphere. Thank you. Being a sphere, you know, it doesn't really have a top and bottom side. It have the inside and the outside. That's it, and a rotation. So that's the only thing wrong with this picture. The rotation was wrong. But I'd like to open with that to kind of stimulate you. And now we're going to get into the presentation because it kind of goes in that direction. Innovation, we're in the business of innovation management. And obviously there's ways to think about innovation. There's processes, there's ways to find innovation and develop innovation. And what we realized after, you know, working with researchers for about 8 years, mostly in the soybean breeding side of things and developing imagery, is that there was a lot amount of time is spending organizing the data, data from different sources, stuff it's, dispersed in different databases, paper. And at the end of the day, that researcher or that person that's developing that innovation, spending way more time organizing information than actually getting the outputs of all those testings and innovation that they're trying to develop. So with that insight, and because the way the company evolved, we were doing, 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, close to 4 million plots of soybean breeding plots are across the US, Brazil, and Argentina. And if you do the math, that means you got to be processing at least 20,000 of those a day. We have to develop our own tool to manage all that data. So when we understood that, that was an issue also on the researcher side. So why don't we take the tool that we developed for ourselves, turn it into a tool where people can organize their data, and not just the data we provide, but from other sources of information that they currently need. So that's how Eiwa Vault was born. So with that, I'm gonna clicker. There we go. So we kind of revised our mission, and our mission today is to mobilize the world's agronomic knowledge. We put that in a cloud platform. It's on Amazon Web Services. Our infrastructure is all there. And by allowing that data to come in organized, we now free up a lot of that time to the innovators in ag to develop knowledge. That's the whole goal and our mission now. Where the company is based, Argentina is where the company started, but today we are a US organization with operations here in Brazil, Argentina. 50% of our revenue comes from US customers, 30% Brazil, 20% Argentina. We are closing an investment round that will kind of continue to help us grow. And this is what Eiwa Vault is all about. It's a platform where you can bring in data from machinery, satellite, weather. Oops, that's not what I wanted to show. There we go. And help you manage your own programs, right? So even organizations like Purdue or a crop input company, you have, sets of data that are dispersed. And the hardest part, the bottleneck usually is how do I integrate all this stuff? So that's our goal. With this platform, we are geospatial first and then tabular later. And a lot of times, just how things happen, you end up being tabular first, and then geospatial is another layer, try to correlate. So we went the other route, and it's been proven very successful. This platform has been out for a year now, a little bit over a year now. We doubled the number of customers that we had. That we had 8 years to build. Within 11 months, we doubled that, and now we can help bridge those layers. So like I said, we're GIS first, so we can ingest shape files, all kinds of maps, soil maps, planting maps, all that kind of information. And so you can turn on and off those layers over the area of interest that you have. And that could be, a strip trial, a small plot trial, a side-by-side trial, your own field. And the nice thing, you can cross that info through what you're seeing, and everything that comes in imagery like this or shapefile like this, we turn that into tabular data, so we can correlate that, and I'll show you later how that works. We still have a library of algorithms that we develop, but we're opening this to participation of third parties and other organizations that develop this kind of knowledge, and that's what we want to stimulate. We want to help with our platform for more people to develop algorithms, and then us allow those folks to commercialize those algorithms. So if you more in the open source or developing your own algorithms, we'll be kind of like the app store for you for commercializing those algorithms, because we do have the outreach to these customers today that are collecting data, that are collecting imagery and all that. And sometimes all they need is a new algorithm to do some other kind of stain count, for example. So that we'll provide that in our library where they will go and select, algorithm X. They use it, we'll charge for that. Whoever developed the algorithm gets a royalty fee or fee for that, and we all win. With the imagery and other processes that we have, we can help, especially as plot imagery. We can help grid that stuff. All that time that people usually spend, building their mosaics, aligning all those images, that takes a lot of time. We can do that in less than 24 hours. You just send us the imagery, upload it directly into the platform, and 24 hours later, you have your plots are all lined up, and even subsequent images of that's all aligned. We also have an app that comes with the platform for folks to collect data in the field. If they don't currently have a method for that, you can use the app. Fairly simple to use. The data synchronizes back to the platform. It can be used without connection in the field. All you got to do is find an area to connect later. And then, like I said, all comes down to a tabular section of the system where every row here, it's an actual plot in a grid, and it's geospatially located. So all these subsequent information towards the right here, all the columns, those columns are your protocol. So it's super flexible. If all you're doing is collecting planting data and harvest data, you're going to have 2 columns. But if you do have that plus planting speed, harvest speed, weather information, GDUs, whatever that is that your protocol requires, and analytics from your drone imagery, it will just continue to be collected across. And the nice thing is at the end of the season, where usually is when you try to spend time organizing your data is going to be ready in a tabular format. It kind of operates like a pivot table. So you can move columns around, you can summarize them, share the data in that format. And it also comes with a dashboard. So you can then work with this data live kind of thing, where you can, it's very easy to have a in-depth discussion about your results. So, and I come from that background. I spent almost 14 years at Monsanto. My last job there was to run trials nationwide. And this was the hardest thing to do at the end of the season because you're always rushing. Sales folks already want that data for selling the next season over, and you're still crunching the numbers from the last season, right? And trying to put PowerPoints together. This is live. So as the data comes in, it will be building it for you. And now what you're doing instead of spending time debating, if you have the latest data, is sitting down and say, okay, why does this product work better here than there? And it's very interactive in that sense. And I'll show a quick demo here in a little bit. And there are all kinds of different charts that we can build and do, a little bit more into the statistics of it too. But that's kind of what we have today. Before I get too much into a demo of the system, any specific topics, questions the audience may have here in the room or online? Yeah.
Is the website public or?
Yeah, well, you can go to our website, eiwa.ag. And what you'll find there is some information about the platform. Obviously, we sell this. It's a subscription service. And basically, the 2 main components of the price is an annual cost to access the platform. And then if you do use any of the analytics that we offer, that's separate. That's how we operate.
Yeah, if you want to convert data, image to data, which one do you convert?
So you're talking about like UAV imagery data? Yeah. So if you're only converting it to Mosaic, and so you can do grids and stuff, you can just buy the platform, the subscription, and you don't need to pay for the algorithms because you're not really running any algorithms on that. And then you'll have access. You'll see the imagery. I can show you here in the demo how that looks. Yep.
So it looks like your platform is focused on plant breeding mainly, but do you also offer like for farmers and ag retail and for large commercial farms?
Yeah. So we started in breeding. The platform really is agnostic to crops,
Mhm.
and we do all the way from breeding to marketing and sales for farming companies today. So fertilizer companies, biologicals, chemicals, crop protection, any of those that do any kind of field trial, even if it's small plot or side by side, those are the folks that we're supporting today. We are actually now working on developing a more farm level platform, and the difference there and where we're focusing first is mainly very large farmer organizations, because those folks have data problems. Maybe bigger than a farm that maybe is not that large, and the farmer can, with them and their agronomists and the co-op, figure out the things they need to figure out. Where large organizations sometimes, like the ones we have in Brazil and Argentina, they actually have data teams, right? Like any other company. So those are we're going to target first, but then I think it can roll out to smaller organizations as well.
Thanks.
Does the subscription give you access to like a library of data, or are all data made public, or do you just have access to the data you've input?
Yeah, great question. So the data, it's the only data you have access to is your own data, right? So the way the infrastructure works is everybody shares the same infrastructure in Amazon, but then you have your own data set, right? So it's called multi-tenant, right? So it's kind of like a hotel. You go there, everybody has the same room, share water, electricity, but you have your own key for your room, right? So that's how we operate.
So if you wanted to bring in other data sets that were public, would you load them into the system, or could you reference like some API where you just kind of pull it in on demand, or what does that look like? Is that
Yeah, I mean, being all good, our focus here is to help you do your research the best way possible. So if your protocol, your research demands that kind of data,
Yeah.
then it's up to the user to upload that. We can definitely help.
Yeah,
with
like
that
weather
upload.
data or something like
Yeah,
that.
because we do that's the service we have as a separate service, is historical data upload or legacy data upload, we call it.
Okay.
You just call and say, hey, I have this bunch of data to upload. Can you guys do that? And obviously we charge per hour at that point.
Yeah.
And it's uploaded and you have it ready, all formatted, organized this way. Then you can just continue to add data to it, right? Those
Cool.
data sets.
Yeah.
Yep. You guys want to take a look at how it kind of looks? Okay. Let me switch screens here. So what I did is a quick video here, and it starts at the end. I like to start here because this is the kind of the end result. At the end of the day, that's what you want to do, right? You want to, mess with the data, see what it's telling you. So just to walk you through the screen real quick, on the top here, you have the variables are any data you collected for your protocol. So if that means harvest data, weather data, or UAV analytics, it's going to be there. If you're doing multiple locations, and then in this case, it's a corn protocol, so they're hybrids, but it could be, and you'll see in the video, it could be a fungicide program where instead of a hybrid will be, different treatments. And here's a nice thing, it's you get to interact with the data. So if you're doing a product development or you're advancing a product and you want to see, how it performs in one place for one variable or multiple variables, it's all going to be here. So instead of doing 500 different slides, it's there. And because it's all geo-referenced, you can just click directly into the map, and it will know, that's the set of data that you're looking for. Or you can click directly in a chart and select a specific hybrid or variety. Here's a fungicide program. So now we're looking at treatments on the right-hand side on the chart. And then at the bottom, all these tabs are different kinds of charts. Some come standard, but we can customize a lot of this stuff. So the customer will call, say, yeah, I like this, but I need a box chart, or I need a multivariable program. So we'll build those for them. And here's the actual platform and how it works and how easy it is to navigate. So it starts by building, some record of what field you're going to do first. Here you're selecting just the field where that trial will be placed, or if the field is your area of interest, will be just the field. But here's the first like geospatial reference to a location, and then from there you start building these lists of locations, which are crop season and country based. So that's the hierarchy. So a lot of these organizations are operating in multiple countries, so you can see the data throughout. And if you're using the same field over and over, all you got to do is just change the crop and the season, and you continue to use the boundary. From there, you get to build the actual trial. And again, to that earlier question, this is super flexible. It could be microplots, small strip trials, side by sides like we see on the side of the roads. Could be those kind. You design them. System will build a list of them. And here's where you interact, the two systems will kind of come together. Here's where you, on the left-hand side, those little boxes, you get to select which one of these trials you want to run an analytics for. So if you don't want to do analytics, like you asked before, don't skip this step. If you do, you're going to click subscribe. There's a menu of analytics, and here that custom service at the bottom, it could be a Purdue algorithm, right? It could be a little P there. This Purdue algorithm for X. Okay, I'll try that. And kind of like back to the idea of the App Store. Once you select it, what you're doing is just telling the system, hey, once those images come in, let me pause this real quick. What you're telling the system here is, hey, once those images come in, I want you to run this kind of service, this algorithm over those images. So that's all you're doing. And then here it's just showing how easy it is to upload shape files. So back to the GIS layers that we talked about. So planting files, soil files, planting maps, harvest maps, you just drag and drop. We'll ingest that information, and not just the imagery, but the tabular data related to the green, the red, the yellow, whatever it is that you're measuring there. And we can do a little bit of QC of that and also filter that for you, so you can just turn on and off those layers here. And the nice thing is you can overlay that over your trial, which is usually the hardest part. Sometimes we have these files in hand, but then we can't do what we're going to show here, which is, you see the grid right there over the mosaic, over Google Maps. And now on top of that, I turn on and off my layers, right? So now then I have management zones, elevation, planting, whatever that is. Here's to show how easy it is to also upload the drone footage. All we need is a raw image following our flight protocols. You just drag and drop them into the platform. And here's where I was mentioning earlier, within 24 hours, what you're going to get back is the full mosaic, geospatially located, pasted over Google Maps, so you can see the cut right there. The next image is even clearer, so it's right there. You have the full mosaic, and all the user needs to do now is to demarcate the trial. So mark the 4 corners with the information provided earlier. The system draws the grid for you, and you can just adjust that. So way faster than building these mosaics that we know take time, and sometimes they don't align, and all the issues that come with it. And the nice thing is, as you do multiple flights, because some of these analysis require multiple flights, even if you're not doing any analytics, just having a sequence of how those plots, and this is just an example, right? These are micro, but you see the hundreds of them. You can just click on each individual plot on that grid, and you get the whole sequence of all these flights with their dates. So I can see the evolution of this plot compared to the other plot. Maybe one had treatment, the other one didn't, or you have a competitor product. The visualization also of the analytics can be tabular, but it can also be done this way where it's interactive in a kind of a heat map overlaid on top of the grid. So if you see that lighter column there, it would be probably harder to find that on a tabular format, but here it's just like turn on and off, you know where you are in the field. Here's going to show, you know, Excel data. Y'all live and die by Excel, so we can also upload that, and you can download that to Excel. But you know, bring it up, and now here's where we start matching multiple sources. This is the app, kind of an older version of it. I need to update this video, but you can select what you're going to do there in the field, what kind of notes you're taking. In this case, disease, incidence, list there you can pick from. We can edit this, obviously, for your program. And then all you got to do is just tell the system which corner you're going to start taking notes, how you're going to walk it, and then it will, quote unquote, follow you, because it works offline, so it doesn't quite really have a GPS to track you, but it understands the grid. So it will follow that sequence of plots. And even if you stop in the middle, it will let you know where did you stop in the yellow there. And then later on, all you got to do is synchronize. And you'll see here on the back where we are in the platform. Here we have the data that came from that Excel file, the data that came from our analytics from running the images. And now here on the right, a new column will come in after synchronizing with the phone. And now I have a new source of data, the mobile app, the day it was collected, the data I'm collecting, and the values. So imagine, you know, an organization with multiple locations. I'm doing some in-house, some I'm using a third party to run these trials for me, and on and on. Sometimes it takes months to get the data back, weeks, right? Here, if your third party is using the system and entering data for you within a day, and if you get a result like this, that's missing a lot of data, that's a phone call right away. Like, where's, you know, what happened? Instead of knowing later that you lost half of your plots, right? So it has a little those implications as well. And then you can, you know, just download this stuff anytime. It's your data. Back to your question earlier. Yeah, you have a question?
Yes, so a little bit, previously you showed some plots. Is there a minimum size of patch or resolution that you need for running the proper analysis? Say that we are talking about
A tree.
yeah,
Okay.
and one tree, would it be detectable? Say that it's 1 or like 3 square meters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's we get down. Sometimes these plots have only one row. It's the thing is there's going to be some algorithms that we may not have that will help your analysis. But you know, if all you want to know is identify the specific place, yeah, it all depends on how, you know, what the altitude of the drone flight. So we can see either a bigger area or a very narrow area.
Have you had any experience for analyzing some fruit trees like grape, peach, apples, or?
Yeah, so we have a customer now. It's a fertilizer company that's doing that. So we're doing, I think we did oranges, peach, and their concern is more about organizing the data they have today. They have a mess of how they collect this data in the field, different forms and paper and stuff like that. So we're trying to organize that first to then come with imagery later. Sometimes people jump really quick into imagery. Oh yeah, let's get a drone that's going to help us out, and then you get, you know, the problems of building the mosaics and correlate that data. So with this customer, we're first organizing that to then allow them to, you know, facilitate the use of drones later, right? But yeah, we're doing watermelons, tomatoes, potatoes, trees, and all the row crops that you think, sunflower, wheat, corn, soybeans, obviously.
For chronology of trees, when the trees start open, different trees has a different type of chronology birthday.
Okay.
And is it possible to take for example, the RGB photo and then process them to see the time of each tree when it's open and process them?
Yeah, I'll give it a try. We do, canopy evolution with the row crops today. That's the service that we currently provide. So it's a matter of trying it, see what kind of results we get, and if we need to use RGB or multispectral, see what kind of imagery we better suits that need. And the nice thing, you'll have all those pictures in a sequence, right? So you'll have the day and how they evolved, and then the data associated with that. So that's
The
what
only
helps.
thing if it can, because the one start to birthday and it can to pink then green. And if we can detect the color, then it's easy to transfer it to date, which date.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would love to try it. I haven't done anything specifically like that, but yeah, I'd love to try it. So back here, so you can export the data. And like I was showing on the slides, you can move this like a pivot table. You can move columns away, remove columns, bring filter, summarize, group, pretty much like a pivot table. And then we're back to building the charts. And here we're going to get a little bit more in depth of, there's heat maps, there's different selections that you can do. Basically, this is a Tableau behind the scenes that's running, and we can customize it quite a bit to your need. You can download a PDF of what you have on the screen, and then do this different comparisons, like relative heat maps for yield or some other variable that you're interested on. The famous G versus E, right? Genetic by environment. So in there, you just, the system, the user did in this case is selecting two hybrids, and so you know how it works on a low yield environment, higher yield environment, how they compare to each other. You have the option to do what we call the multivariable chart, and this is a nice one. Let me see if I can hit it right at the right time here. Right there. So on this chart, you can do X and Y, whatever you want. The variable's already there. And now it's like, okay, I want to compare my NDVI with yield, or I want to compare my planting with, I don't know, spacing. You can play with these two variables and build these analytics, and then box charts and that kind of stuff. So again, our mission is not to tell you how to do your research. It's just to make your research a lot easier. That's the goal here. To allow folks to really spend the time analyzing the data and not spending time organizing it and trying to figure out where the data come from. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you today. Yeah.
How much are you working with Purdue researchers in their field research?
Today, 0, but I would love to help. Because last year we tried, but I came in kind of late into the season. Everybody was already kind of ready to plant, and it was more of an issue to bring something new than to help. So I hope this year maybe we can help 1 or 2 professors with their field programs, or even at the acre farm, because I think it can help organize the data in a more standardized way, right? Thank you. So yeah, we're open to any of those interactions. And actually, have a special pricing for education organizations, and we call it partners. So that's a 30% discount of what we offer. Yep.
Last week, we had a discussion about precision ag technology being used for risk management.
Yes.
Is there any way that this data can help the user with their risk management?
I believe so. Especially when we get into the level of like farm level. If I'm a banker doing a loan or, you know, analyzing, I would love to have a set of data that I can compare across multiple regions or within a region and say, hey, when I put these parameters, just imagine here, soil, a specific kind of seed or rate, or define what your management zone is and be able to say, okay, this management zone A here on this area is the exact same as this one, and I can compare all of these management zones together and have a risk assessment of that. I'll put it at, you know, a risk level, and then I have my level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's, I mean, it can really change things.
So that's possible if you're pooling data across farms, right? You have
Right.
kind of benchmark and say, okay,
Yep.
typically this soil type will do this
Yep.
with this kind of management.
Yep.
Pooling has been really tough, or is it easier in Brazil?
Well, it depends on the incentives, I believe, right? So if I'm the bank and I bought this system and you're coming to ask me for a loan, I'll ask you to put the data in my system, right? So I can analyze the data the way I want, right? Now, then it's up to the farmer if they want to share the data or not, right? To get that loan. But I think that's kind of how I see it potentially happening. On the other side, on the farmer side, the farmers that we're working on today, the real problem they have at hand is they came to us and say, Carlos, we have the organization we're working with, they're managing over 2 million acres. Okay, that's about 10 farmers. And they said, I have all these farms in different locations, and I'm doing all different practices in different places with precision ag here, no precision ag there, organic here, not organic there. I want to understand if any of this is really working. I want to understand the ROI of this stuff. So what we're doing is this on the agronomic side, and then bring it in on those columns, the cost. So now I can play around and say, okay, I spent all this, you know, on variable rates and stuff, and what's my output at scale? And that's where I think, you know, when you reverse that and you go to a bank or a loan or insurance or whatever, you can do that massively. Right?
Have any banks in Brazil or Argentina done that?
Not yet, because we're not at farms yet. All we're doing is input providers, and it's their own data, and that is not shared today, right? However, in the future, for example, we've been working with soybean breeding companies for 8 years now. Obviously, some of these varieties that we tested 8 years ago are commercial today in thousands of acres, probably. I can see in the future, if I have a database that I can understand this data across and share it across, and if the right incentive is there for the breeder or the seed company to share, hey, this variety that I planted 8 years ago, I started testing it 8 years ago. I've been through different weather, different soils, different management practices. It's now in the field in these millions of acres, and I'm getting the feedback from these practices, and I have an issue. I can probably go back and say, oh yeah, we had that issue in 2017, try this. But in order for that to happen, somebody has to pay somebody here, right? For that info. And I'm not opening up my entire book of, you know, lines and varieties. I'm just saying, hey, this is a commercial variety from your company that I'm having an issue today in 1,000 acres. How much it's the value of sharing that, say, hey, because today on the precision ag side, on the most common ag tech companies that I'm familiar with, they get up to the point to detect that there's an issue, but they do not cross the line of recommending what to do. And that's up to the farmer and the co-op to say, well, let's try this now. We know there's a lot of different incentives there on what to try, but if I can bring in some historical data on some of those practices, maybe we can pass that threshold, say, okay, when I see this issue, because I have 8 years of history with this variety before it came to market, I can recommend maybe this practice, maybe option A and B. A thought. Obviously, we haven't tried it, but if you have a set of data that people can trust, I think that could be something else to look into.
Do you have any wisdom on how to deal with confounding data? Maybe that's not the right term, but when I worked for Pioneer Corteva in Iowa 30 years ago, we had a prehistoric version of something like this where
Okay.
all of the yield trials would be put into this huge database. And I remember I spent a lot of time with that, and it was really fun to see, sort things by nitrogen rate, sort things by planting date, sort
Yes.
things by, of course, we always wanted to look at how hybrids performed. And I remember this one specific thing that kind of like was the tipping point for me where I just gave up. And there was one hybrid one year that did especially poor, and we thought it was a very good hybrid, and we couldn't quite figure out why it did so poorly. But come to find out, all of the yield trials on that that hybrid was brought in as a late planting option in our area after like a wet spring. And so all those, anytime that hybrid appeared, it was in a like disastrously late situation, and it made that hybrid look terrible.
Sure.
But that's just one silly example of that. But how do you deal with all these confounding things that seem to like the noise just overrides any effect all the time? Just looking for your wisdom.
Well, yeah, I guess, sometimes the answer is just let's find more data, right?
Right.
But I think this will allow you to do that analysis a lot faster. I don't know how much time you probably spent trying to find all those correlations, but this will definitely help in that sense. The other thing that I tell folks, this company with this product, it wouldn't exist 10 years ago, because a lot of the sensors that we have today available didn't exist, and people wouldn't bother about them. Now, and if you look into 5 years from now, how many more new sensors are going to be? Soil sensors, plant sensors. The company that I met the other day, Interplant, that are bringing this change in the gene that expressed stress from a satellite. You can see it from a satellite. Who's going to manage that data? Who's going to correlate that with those management practices or environmental issues? It's just going to be crazy. So that's where I feel like this is the right time to have a tool like this for all that's about to come, right? Even machinery sensors are mounted on machines today that weren't mounted 10 years ago. It's just more data, more data. At some point, somebody has to bring all that together. So I mean, we're not in that space, but we're in the space of helping organize it.
I think I was very naive in the day to not have checked planting date quicker than I did, to see that hybrid was always going to wait. But
Right.
another question, who's your primary competitor in this space? I mean, we had Griffin here a couple of weeks ago, but they seem more imagery focused.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Griffin could be a great partner to us.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say any of the companies generating data, and even ag tech companies that are doing recommendations, they can be customers of ours or partners with us. Direct competitors, we didn't have truly anybody until about a month ago. So there are actually 3 companies that I would put in that realm. One is Intent, also from St. Louis, that they changed they're changing their operation mode. They were more field boots on the ground running trials, and now they moved into the platform space. I haven't seen their platform. They haven't launched it yet. And there are another 2 companies from Israel, and just recently announced Mineral AI from Google. And you guys heard of it or not? Yeah, it just launched about a month ago. Mineral AI. So they're in this space, trying to organize data, understand data, generate AI, machine learning. So those today are kind of our competitors. We do still compete a little bit with companies that, what they do kind of like Griffin, that just do imagery and analytics, but Griffin is a different level because they're doing multispectral and not multispectral. I forgot the sensor they're using. LiDAR, and it's a whole different level. But we do compete still with some of the ones that are just doing RGB and analytics that way. But we bring this other piece, which is, okay, I got the results from your imagery, but now I still have to do the work of finding out where that data point came from and correlate that with everything else. So.
It seems like a lot of, sorry if anyone else has a question, I don't need to.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got 10 minutes. Oh, okay.
This will be quick anyway, I think, but the algorithms that users can select, I assume those sit sort of in between the collection data input and the visualization.
Yes.
Are the outputs of those algorithms mainly then numeric kind
Yes.
of calculations?
Yes.
along the input?
Yeah. So the result of that will be in tabular format, but also on those heat maps overlaid on top of the grid.
It seems like there would be a lot to be borrowed from these data service providers that farmers have used, like the Climate Corp, Field View, Granular, R7 type of stuff.
Yep.
Is that, those all seem to be sort of in a troublesome spot now, I guess I would say. But your stuff looks like it's, you know, very promising and working.
Yeah. So it's because we sit on top of that massive data creation that was created. That's what I was talking about 10 years ago. This wouldn't be worth it at a dime. But now that we have this, you know, dispersion of data from all kinds of sources and sensors and weather stations, and somebody has to put it together. And that's why I think it's very timely to have something like this.
But I mean, with research plots, you have the advantage of more sensors and an intense look at a small area.
Yep.
I guess, is that right?
And that's where we're kind of grew up in that environment, right? So we know how to do that, and now it's about a scale.
Yeah.
Right. Other companies, like I mentioned earlier, the intent comes from the other endpoint. They're coming from doing big trials, and they're trying to get into more intense, right? We come the other way, but we're trying to solve the same problem. Any questions from anybody online? Okay. I thought there was something.
We'll make it online later.
Very good. Very good.
That's our post-COVID attendance strategy.
Perfect. Very cool. Very cool. I don't know how we're doing on time.
We're good.
We ran over.
No, we've got about 8 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, our focus from now until the end of the year is still very much in farm input companies. Like I said, obviously research organizations like Purdue and others. I'm talking to some other universities here in the US. There's an organization in Argentina that I work with. It's more on the education side. And then if everything works out well with this project that we have with farmers, by middle of the year, later this year, we should have a more farmer-looking solution.
Seems like seed production fields would be a natural next step for you too, because they're more intensively managed and you already have all these clients.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the same clients.
Yep. Yeah, we're actually growing quite a bit with these folks within their organizations.
Yeah.
Even now into vegetables and others that they also have the need. And it's funny because a lot of people end up buying drones right away, and now they're realizing the problem it is to manage all those images. So it's perfect timing for us to show up at the door. Because before it was just like, I can't manage all this Excel stuff. Now it's like, oh, they send me all these images too, and what do I do?
Yeah.
So fun problem. Deal. Well, I want to extend it if we don't need to.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.